Hello and what is up YouTube, how it's going? And today in this video we're gonna talk about how to build Arlecchino. Now let's talk about Arlecchino. She's a pyro DPS which does most of her damage from her normal attacks, and in this video we're gonna cover her main stats, to her weapons, to artifact requirements, talents, till constellation, and her team comps at last. So let's get started without further ado. Looking over her main stats, at first leveling her up to level 90 is most important, and then you should only focus on her crit ratio and her attack, where her minimum crit rate should be 60 and crit damage should be 180, and if the ratios are above it, it's even better. And finally, the third thing to focus on her stat is her attack. I would recommend you to only focus on her crits and attack as high as possible and have not to worry about any of rest of her stats. That's all for her main stat. Now let's talk about weapons. Her Crimson Moon Spear is her best in slot if you are pulling for her weapon. Now let's talk about other 5-star weapons you can use to run on her, which are Xiao signature weapon and Sino signature weapon if you had them, and in 4-star weapon if you are a battle pass player, then the Spear Dread Strand is a wise choice, and if you are a F2P player, you can use White Tassel, and keep in mind it should be R5 refinement to give her best performance, and as usual do max weapon level. Now moving on to the artifact section, there are many mixings and matching you can do, but I would recommend you to use 4-piece set of harmonic Whimsy, and you can even also use gladiator set cause many people do, but I've still harmonic of the Whimsy is the best in all of them. Basically it's made for Arlecchino set, and basically equipping 2 set of this artifact will increase your attack percentage, and if you equip 4 pieces set, then it will give you more 18% character damage, which can be up to 3 stacks if the value of Bond of Life will increase or decrease. What is Bond of Life? You will know about this in later talent section. For now let's focus on artifact section. So in the artifact section it's easy, you just need to remember the same thing as I told you in her stat section, that is only you need to focus on crits and her attack, nothing else. Alright, so in flower if it's attack percentage and crit rate and crit damage, that's a safe case. In feather the main stat is attack, so you will only need crit rate and crit damage and attack percent. The fourth option can be anything. And in sands the main stat should be attack percent with crit rate, crit damage and attack as a substat, while the goblet needs pyro damage as a main stat and crit rate, crit damage and attack percent and attack as a substat. And as for circlet, you could use crit rate or crit damage as according to your own what you need more, so just that, and other things should be in substat. If it's crit rate as main stat, then crit damage should be in substat, while with attack percentage and attack. Or if you need crit damage as a main stat, then crit rate, attack percentage and attack as a substat. Well, now this wraps up about the guide of artifact for Arlecchino. Now let's talk about talents. So in talents you need to prioritize to level up her normal attacks and charge attack and her elemental skill, then you can focus on her elemental burst. So crown her normal attack and charge attack, and then you can just level 9 both her elemental skill and her elemental burst. Now talking about her normal attacks, she can do 6 consecutive normal attacks in a sequence, and if paired with her elemental skill, she can do more damage with her normal and charge attack. So what does her elemental skill do? Well, basically when you tap her elemental skill, it marks a cross mark on an opponent, which after 5 seconds becomes glowy like thing. A cross mark glows and it blooms like a flower or something. Then after you charge attack on the opponent, it will suck the bond life which was ready, and it will give you a bond of life, like in a red thing you will see underneath her HP. And now your normal and charge attack will deal pyro damages, which is 6 consecutive strikes of normal attacks, and it will increase your normal and charge attack damages according to the bond of life how much you have. Like it will decreases per attack, and the higher the bond of life you have, the higher the damage Arlecchino does. And also remember, during the fighting time, then when Arlecchino fights an opponent, she cannot be healed by any other healer in the party and can only be healed by her elemental burst. Now moving on to the elemental burst. Her elemental burst deals a pyro AoE damage while healing her if your HP is down based on her bond of life, which is scaling off on HP. You can see that in your lower HP bar. Do keep in mind that after applying elemental skill on your opponent, you have to wait till 5 seconds so that you can gain more bond of life, which will increase your damage against opponent. And one of her passive talent is that she increases her resistance to interruption every attack you have, so it will max up to 20% of resistance. And her last passive skill is in during combat, Arlecchino gains 40% pyro damage bonus, and you can only get healed by her elemental burst. So if you have a pyro damage goblet, which and this, so it will multiply the amount of pyro damages. And now this wraps her about her talent. Now getting into her constellations. So her constellation 1 increases her normal and charge attack damage, which is imbued with pyro using elemental skill, and she has more resistance than getting interrupted by her opponent's attack while doing her damage. Heading on to the constellation 2, now you don't need to wait for 5 seconds after using elemental skill, and after you taking her elemental skill, the cross sign, you can deal now AoE pyro damage to her surrounding, which is 900% of her, and also your physical and elemental resistance will very much increase. And constellation 3 simply just increase your normal attack damage by 3 level. So if you have crowned your normal attack, then it will be 10 plus 3 13 level. That's the highest you can go on her. Now in her constellation 4, every time you absorbs her cross mark from the opponent, you will get more energy particle for your elemental burst, and her elemental burst cooldown will decrease for 2 seconds. So you will have now 13-second cooldown. So now in her C5 constellation, basically it will increase your elemental burst damage by 3 level. So it will be 13 level. And finally in her C6, Arlecchino elemental burst will deal 700% damage of her how much bond life you have with her absorbed. And also after you apply elemental skill to the opponent, you will get 10% increased crit rate and 70% increased crit damage, which will last up to 15 seconds. So it's like every time it will be up to 10% of crit rate and 70% of crit damage, because your elemental skill cooldown is 13 seconds. So that's it for her constellations. Now let's head on to her team comps. There are 4 total reactions you can do with pyro. 1 is vaporize, 2nd is melting, 3rd is burning, and 4th is overload. So let's talk about vaporize team. You can use Arlecchino with Yelan or Xingqiu or both of them, and as a 4th character you can use a Sealder or you can use Bennett. And either you can use Arlecchino, Yelan, Bennett and Zhongli, or you can use double pyro and double hydro, so Arlecchino, Yelan, Xingqiu and Bennett. Or you can even use Kazuha to apply hydro to the opponents while swirling, and then you can use Arlecchino as pyro DPS, so it will be Arlecchino, Yelan or Xingqiu and then Kazuha and Bennett. So in melt team you can use Arlecchino with Citlali or Senhe or Leila or Chongyun with any other teammates you want, either Bennett or Sealder or Kazuha for swirling, as you like. And if you are doing burning, then Emily is a good option, so with Arlecchino and Arlecchino Emily, and always use a shield, you will also burn otherwise, and you can use any other character as a fourth option, but just not take any anemo like Kazua, cause the Dendro does not give any reaction with anemo, so it will not swirl Dendro. Or you can use instead of their Nahida, that will be a good option. Or you can use Yao as a healer if you have been burned or you wanna heal teammates. And at last it's Overload, which is Pyro and Electro reaction, so you can use Arlecchino with Raiden, Whistle, a Sealder Zhongli if you don't want, or you want an Anemo as a swirling Electro, so Kazuha, Venti, there are options. Even a 4-star Sucrose will also swirl a really good with Electro, then you can use Arlecchino as a DPS and Overload Boom reaction. Alright, that's it for the guide, and you can see my little showcase for Arlecchino and her R2 signature weapon.
Illusion shattered! Shine down! Illusion shattered! I'm going in! Bring it!
That's it for the video. If you got any query, you can ask down in the comment. I will reply to all the comments which I will get, and also you can discuss between viewers. Also make sure to like, subscribe and notify to get all the upcoming videos which I will post. Have a great day. Bye bye.